everybody to tonight's Board of Education meeting. Mrs. Rutledge, please call the roll.
Ms. Arnold? Here. Ms. Hunt? Yes. Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Mr. Gunn? Here. Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Ms. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Gunn?
Yes.
Motion carries.
More to presentations.
Thank you. Tonight we've got two presentations. The first one, both of them are very special, but the first one was really a recognition. So at this time I'd like to ask Kevin Jack, J.C. Sloan, and Sheila Sloan from Be Hope Church if they would not mind coming up to the front. Come on up to the front.
You guys match.
So I'd like to recognize and thank Be Hope Church on behalf of the Beavercreek City School District Board, our staff, and especially our students for the generous donation of $40,000 that their church gave to Beavercreek City Schools. Honestly, words cannot thank them enough for what they've done for our district, what they've done for our kids, and what they've done for our community. The district has taken this monetary donation and we've hired a part-time counselor. That part-time counselor will work throughout the entire school year this year, working with kids. They will be collaborating with building staff to determine student needs and counseling supports for our kids, family engagement, and coordination of community resources for our families that were impacted with the tornadoes. We fully recognize that these individuals, along with the membership of Be Hope Church, did not do this to be recognized. They did it, I think, out of the kindness of their heart because they have a passion and love for this community and for the kids that we serve every day and that they serve too. So with that, we would like to give them, usually we give a nice certificate, but we figured $40,000 is not certificate worthy. So we've gone ahead and given you a plaque. It probably could have been a bigger plaque, but we wanted to go ahead and give you a plaque. Just to show our gratitude. If we could get the board members to come up, we'd like to get a picture. Let's give them a big round of applause. Not sure if you guys have anything you want to say at all, or I'm putting you on the spot. Not that Kevin usually calls Sundays.
We did this just because not just we value and saw a need within there, but that we really trust the schools. And so our connection with the leadership and everyone involved, that when the money was given, we had an opportunity to. It was a no-brainer to go. We trust the schools. We trust what they're going to do with it more than anyone else. So thank you guys for what you do.
Great, thank you.
I would just like to say, obviously, thank you for the nice donation, but after the tornado, my family and I, many nights went out and helped with the removal of tree limbs and things. We worked through the Be Hope Church, very well organized, everyone, we did a phenomenal job, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great, if we can get a picture, that'd be great. We'll get that on our website.
Pleasure. Talking to my deputy.
Sit right there.
Short people in front of you.
That's me, what can I say? Vertical challenge.
We're all making funny faces. That was the best.
Thank you. We trust you with our children. We trust you with
One here.
Yeah. And she should be great.
Appreciate it, thanks.
She did it for a half second, right? She did it for a moment. Yeah. Good work. Absolutely.
Okay, our second presentation this evening, this has been a work that has been in process as of next month for a year. So this has been something that we've been working on for a long time. So tonight what we'd like to do is present to the board the work that's been done regarding our master facility plan, kind of laying it out for you, kind of where we're at, where we think we're going, and then what we see happening as we look into our September board. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Thompson.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robb. Good evening, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to be here this evening to present an update for you for the work that the Master Facilities Plan has been working on. As Mr. Robb said, a year in the making. So we involved many, many stakeholders in the process, and some of them are here tonight that are going to share in the presentation. And we'll talk about how we engaged with those stakeholders in the community as well. So you might ask, what is a master facility plan? It's really a process, and you can read that there, to utilize community engagement to develop a master plan to deal with anticipated growth. So you're looking 9, 10, 15 years out in the future to say, what's coming our way? What do we need to do now so we are prepared to deal with those things as they come towards us? Once it's completed, we have a plan that we can move forward with. So we don't have to guess on what's going on. We've got a layout of what we want to do. We've already had those conversations, and we have a plan that we can follow and move forward with. The three-legged stool. I just love this slide. It is a strong three-legged stool. As a master plan would have, it is educationally appropriate, physically responsible, and community supported. So these were basically our three guiding lights that we used during the process. And as we worked in different directions, we'd always use this as a checkpoint to say, okay, are we on the right track? Are we staying educationally appropriate, physically responsible, and community supported? So again, we used a lot of community involvement to make sure it's better to get that information now and deal with those things as opposed to trying to do it later on down. This plan was basically built from the ground up. It was not a plan that I had. It was not a plan that Mr. Otten had. It was not predetermined at all. We developed it over time with a lot of brainstorming and collaborating to get to the point that we are now that we'll share with you tonight. Key focus points, community engagement. Again, we wanted to use all of our stakeholders. Assessments of our current facilities. So what do we have out there now? What kind of condition are our buildings in? How old are our buildings? What can we do with them? Enrollment projections, that's a key point to this conversation, and I'll talk more about that here very shortly. We developed a community advisory team to develop consensus. It's a group of more than 60 that met on a regular basis to make sure we're going the right direction. Open public forums to gauge the appropriateness of solutions. So we would build things and then share it with the community to make sure that it was on the right track, that they would agree with it. Understanding curriculum requirements. We are here to educate children, so we can't lose sight of that. We need to make sure that our curriculum is going to work with any plan that we put together. And then interfacing with the public, the Board of Education, community advisory team, and other district stakeholders for input direction. So those were the key points that we focused on during this process. So why do we need a master facility plan? Why does Beavercreek Schools need to have a master facility plan? Obviously, we have capacity issues. We hear about it at certain buildings. Some are worse than others, but there's definitely a lot of folks moving into this area, and the capacity of our buildings can't support the growth that's coming in. Anticipated growth, I'll show where there are developments being built, especially in the township area, where we know we've got shovels in the ground and houses going up, and that's going to mean more kids for us. Aging facilities, our buildings are aging, especially compared to new state-of-the-art facilities. So we need to be aware of that. We need to make sure we are creating facilities that can give our kids the opportunities that they need moving forward to be successful. And then the evolving education process, 21st century education, I'm sure you've heard those terms, and that ties back to some of our buildings need some work there. When we look at enrollment projections, we have worked with planning advocates on enrollment projections for many, many years, and we continue to do that. They give us typically 3 sets of numbers: a low growth, a moderate, or most likely, and a high growth. And we have consistently trended with their high growth model. So that's what I'm showing you here. So if you look down in the lower right-hand corner there, that 9218, that is our projected enrollment in 2017-2018 school year.
27, 28.
27, 28, you're right. I'm going backwards. We are currently projected this year to be at 8297. And my next slide will show a little bit more on that. But what I wanted to show here basically is this enrollment projection worksheet is the basis of a lot of the conversation moving forward. And this is a company that we've worked with for many years, and we have typically trended on their high projection numbers. Their numbers have been very accurate. Last year, they had us projected at 8192. At our highest enrollment last year, we were at 8181, a difference of 11 students. So that's very, very good. This slide shows our current district capacity. That orange column in the middle is calculated capacity, and it is per building. And if you look down at the bottom, you can see 8313. So with our current facilities, that's how many students we can house.
Can I?
Yes.
Can you just explain the 661, those numbers, just so everybody understands? Because I think when people look at this and they see Parkwood at 661 and you see Trayvine at 660, can you just, what you shared with me today, because that was
Yes.
a question I brought up,
Yep.
in case you're looking at that.
So when you look in that far right-hand column, 2027, 28, high projection enrollment, when you get to the elementary buildings, you'll notice they're all at 661 or 660. So they do a grade level, and depending on where we have a district, it doesn't matter, they balance it out across all elementaries. So those don't necessarily represent each of those buildings, they represent the group of elementaries, because those are the grade levels of K through 5.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. So if you look at that second column from the left, our enrollment as of today, so I got a report from Kylie this morning, and we are at 8225 as of today. So we are climbing closer and closer to our calculated capacity. So I think the timing of this conversation is right on, maybe even a little bit behind. Time will tell with projections. So when you look at our 27, 28 high projection of 9218, subtract our capacity, we need 905 more seats. So that's one of the driving forces in this conversation as well. So when we started talking about what could a solution look like, we should be able to accommodate 10 years out another 905 students. This slide kind of puts it all together, projections compared to capacity. It shows calculated capacity in that first column on the left, and that is per building. And then the next two columns, last year's actual enrollment was 8108. And that was not the high, that was at the end of the year, so we had lost a few. Today, we are at 8225, and you can see per building where we're at. Some of the buildings that we hear that we have capacity issues, you can see that on here. So the preschool, we are over capacity, Fairbrook, Maine, Trayvine, and the high school. So those are ones that as of today, we are over those calculated capacity numbers. You'll notice on the bottom, we have in the blue, those first 5 columns. The first column is 1920 forecasted enrollment. So their forecast at the bottom, we've got per building and per grade level. Per grade level, there's a little bit of discrepancy there in those numbers. We are using the per grade level numbers. That is a more conservative estimate. So that's what we're going with. There was some discrepancy with planning advocates numbers when you look at it per building. So this year they have us forecasted again at 8297, and we are at 8225, a difference of 72. So on day 2, we are 72 students away from their projection. There's a lot of information on this. You can see in that bottom right-hand corner, that forecasted enrollment is 9218. That's 9 years out, and that's the number we're working off of that we need to have space for. Any questions so far on this? I know there's a lot of detail here. Continued growth. This slide, and I apologize, it's not the easiest to read. We got this through the township, and you'll see on the right-hand side in color, that is the township area. All of those circles are developments that are in process where new homes are going in. This includes Nathaniels Grove, River Reserve, Stonehill Village, Claiborne Green, Spindletop, River West, Country Club of the North, Woodbridge Estates, White Barn Trails, and others. So there's multiple going in. And this slide is actually about 6 months old, so I'm sure there's updates to it. Redistricting, is that a solution? It is a short-term solution, and as you all know, we went through that process last year. We evaluated a lot of solutions, and we got the community very engaged and had a lot of engaged conversations. We threw a lot of ideas out there, and we got the feedback, so we came up with a collaborative solution. The final recommendation was to move Nathaniels Grove, which was 400 homes that was in the Trayvine area, to the main area. And that really is just a Band-Aid for Trayvine. It's still, our overall capacity doesn't change with any redistricting. It just is a short-term solution to help in the meantime. This slide shows our 1920 attendance zones, and you can see on the right-hand side there in the green, that is all of Trayvine's attendance area, which is very big, which is in the township, which is where all that growth is occurring. Nathaniels Grove is that section right here that we have moved into the main area. So that helps for now. And then across the top, we've got Maine and Shaw. Those all feed into Coy Middle School. And then across the bottom, we've got Parkwood Valley and Fairbrook, which feed into Ankeny Middle School. So,
Can I add to this for a second?
Yes.
Greg? So one of the things that when we balanced this out in terms of the elementaries, we look, obviously Trayvine was the one that was busting at the seams. So when we went ahead and made this move of that pink section that you can actually see the border is still there, when that pink section moved to Maine, it obviously will alleviate some of that for Trayvine. Clearly, it's a 400 plus house development. But what it will not alleviate, Coy, because both those schools they funnel into Coy. So those 400 homes will impact Coy as well. So Coy does room. But this year, we've moved 3 fifth-grade classrooms from Trayvine over to Coy. And I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think we were just told the other day that there might be 28 lockers left in the building.
22, I believe.
22 lockers
22
left in
lockers.
the building after we moved our 5th grade over there. So you put in perspective, it's filling up
Yep.
quickly. Thank you, sorry about that.
No, thank you for adding. So that's where we are today. And then we have engaged with SHP Leading Design for our master facility planning process. And Mr. Phil Anastasio is here today from SHP to fill you in on that process and what we've done there.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Phil Anastasio. I'm SHP Leading Design. I'm actually here in place of Jeff Parker. He had a little health problem that he's dealing with. So I'm in his place. I don't have the height or the hair that he did, but hopefully I can do my best service to this. I've been helping Jeff behind the scenes on this. I just haven't been as visible. So I'm going to go through what we, as an architectural firm, do in the master planning process. And as Paul mentioned, it's a year long as of just recently. And when Greg mentioned that 3-legged stool about having the financially responsible, educational appropriate, and community supportable, that takes time. You can't just make these decisions in a couple months and go. It takes a year-long process because you have to look at all the data, really dig deep, and then just let it soak in. Think about it, and then keep all these iterative solutions that came up, and then testing it. It's not something that you want to rush into. It's a very large decision for a community, and it takes time. So this is the process that we've been going through. We're at right now at the Board of Education, and then we're talking about educational visioning in the fall, where we kind of engage a community to see how they want their students to be educated and how the spaces will reflect that. So the first part of the community master planning process is a community advisory team. So we got together a group of 60 diverse team members, and we had 4 working sessions. And we took all that great data that Greg was talking about, all the facilities information, all that scarily growth that I've seen. I didn't know that many subdivisions. And just all that data and really informed this CAT team, as we called it. And they started developing range of solutions to respond to that. So the goal of a CAT team is to get kind of a cross-section of the district and the community. So we had a goal of getting 60% of kind of community people, 30% of staff and teachers in the district, and 10% of kind of the geopolitical trustees, city officials. So we got together of 60 plus individuals, and hopefully you can see, if the people here can see your name in big lights. So you can see it's a cross-section of the community, and we do this because we kind of want to get the breadth of the opinions and the viewpoints, and they can be kind of ambassadors to their kind of groups in the community, and it's a great way to kind of funnel that down. And then the process kind of goes deep, so we're getting the breadth of the community, and then we work deeper into it to kind of get to these solutions. So the next part of the process was open community forums. So as the CAT team was looking through and developing these solutions, we had 5 forums where we held across the district, and we kind of tested them. We informed them, because that's the most important part. We can't just ask a community how they respond to a solution. We have to inform them of all the great information, all the need that is current and the needs that are coming. And we had to get them all that same level of education, and then we allowed them to kind of rank the solutions that we came up with. And we also had online surveys to get more feedback from the community. So we, when the community needs to make a decision like that, they want to be heard. They want to be part of the process. It's not something to be force-fed into them. So this is a great way for the community to kind of give their 2 cents along the process. And it helps, it's an iterative process, it helps the decision. I mean, at the end, there's a polling third-party process where we kind of validate that along the way. Are there any questions on the process? Oh, sorry. That's my bad. So the CAT team actually came down to 4 options. through the process, there were 4 different solutions. One was a distributed additions through all the schools. The other one was a new elementary with distributed additions. The third one was a new high school. And then the fourth one was a second high school in the district. So through the whole process and the survey mechanisms and community forums, we narrowed it down to 2 solutions. And that was tested through a third-party polling.
Yep.
Is there any questions along the way?
That's I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Fallon just got here, I believe, from Columbus City. That's what Ryan. So it's okay.
So, thank you, Mr. Constadio. Next, we have Fallon Research, who completed a community survey for us, and he will give us the details on that. He basically conducted community research for us to test those 2 options that Phil just talked about. So, Fallon Research and Communications was founded in 2001. It's a full-service public opinion research and polling service. He's done extensive work with K-12 education, especially in the Columbus area and really all over. So, with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Fallon.
Every time.
Where would you like to speak?
Right here would be great.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Fallon. I'm with Fallon Research and Communications. I'm going to verbally brief you on the results of a survey that was conducted recently on behalf of the school district. Let me mention first and foremost that the survey was conducted through telephone interviews that were performed by specially trained opinion research interviewers. That is, they weren't telemarketers who were trained to elicit affirmative responses. They were data gatherers trained to elicit truthful responses. The survey was conducted with 304 randomly selected registered voters residing within the Beavercreek City School District, and we interviewed respondents on a combination of residential, landline, cellular, and voice internet protocol telephone systems. And the reason we interview people now on their cellular phones is to avoid a coverage error that would be created if we just relied on, say, landline service. For 304 interviews, the overall estimated margin of sampling error is plus or minus 5.62%. That just means that when you factor in rounding, if we asked on a survey, for example, what is your favorite topping on a pizza? If 50% of the respondents said black olives, because of sampling variability, that number could be as low as about 44% to as high as about 56%. The interviews were conducted during the period of May 13th through May 17th, so this is very recent data. And the results were stratified so that differences in vital characteristics such as age, race, gender, and geography are all represented in proportion to their percentages of the electorate. And the reason we do that is to prevent under or oversampling of any subgroups from distorting the results. Unless otherwise noted, I'm only going to talk about statistically significant differences this evening. Let me start first and foremost by talking a little bit about the opinion climate. First and foremost, at the time the survey was conducted, 45%, a plurality, said that property taxes were too high in the community. So that's the prism through which a lot of voters are going to walk into the ballot box and use to make decisions about ideas, and even those that have a lot of merit may to some extent wither because of that high tax sensitivity. Second, 41% said that the rate of housing growth was too fast. So that was another consideration as well. But 46% plurality said it was about right. So not yet at the point where the rate of housing growth is becoming a preponderant problem in the community, according to the public. Overall, a whopping 79% said the quality of education is excellent or good, including 88% of parents. And when you think about the margin of sampling error, that means 9 out of 10 parents said the quality of education is exemplary. That's a really impressive rating. I've worked for probably more school districts than anyone in my industry in Ohio, and I can tell you, you'd be the envy of many of them. Also, 53% of the job the school district does spending tax money and managing its budget is excellent good, which is also high. I know there's a disparity between the rating for that and the rating for the quality of education, but people tend to look at the ratings for managing finances a little bit differently. One of the reasons is because of the complex and somewhat Byzantine way in which schools are funded, but also too because there are really no telltale signs compared to education. When you think about the ratings for education, people hear about kids getting accepted to good colleges, good report cards, and graduation rates, but those real telltale signs for managing finances really don't exist. So in the absence of information, people tend to be a little bit more conservative. But you're above the 50% threshold for that rating, which is where I tell my clients they want to be at. Now let's talk a little bit about facilities. First and foremost, I coined this phrase, little building envy was exhibited by your voters, as only 14% said Beavercreek's buildings were not as good as those of neighboring school districts. And that was in a split sample. In the other version of that same question, which we asked to a select group of respondents, only 12% said the buildings in this community were not as good as those of the Centerville schools. So you compare favorably. Also, only 20% said that most Beavercreek City School District class sizes are too big, but it got up to 36%, well above a third for parents. And when I mean parents, that is people who at the time of the survey had a child enrolled in the school system. And that's an important point of nomenclature because there were people in the survey who had children that were attending public schools or were not yet of school age. But for those purposes, they were considered non-parents in the survey, with one exception that I'll talk about in a little bit. Also, only 17% said that the elementary school class sizes are too big, but it got up to 36 among parents, but just 8% of future parents said that. And future parents are people who did not have a child enrolled in the school system at the time of the survey, but said they expect to within the next 5 years. So they're probably the people who are going to be most affected in the coming years. Views were split when asking about whether the district should work within its existing budget to fund capacity needs, even though money will have to be redirected from education, with 43% choosing that option. 40%, a nearly comparable amount, said that they want the district to seek some kind of bond issue to fund building capacity needs, even though taxes will go up. And that got about 52% with parents, but it was much lower with non-parents. So that was really a point of division in the survey. Also, 30% agreed that even though the high school may appear serviceable from the outside, it may no longer be suitable to offer modern learning experiences and technology infrastructure to ensure students are getting the kind of advanced education needed to prepare them for college or the workforce. Got up to 40% with parents. Overall, 30% disagreed, and a sizable number of voters did not have an opinion about the issue, including most notably senior citizens, for whom a plurality said they had no opinion about the matter. Maybe that they're just not attuned to it, or they just do not have an appreciation for the current capabilities of the school system, so they couldn't render an opinion. However, that's notable because senior citizens are a fairly sizable portion of the electorate. They represent about 29% of your community's voters. Also, still looking at school issues, facilities that is, a majority, 53%, said that ensuring students are attending schools as close to their homes as possible should be the most important factor used to decide what will be done. And that sentiment was also shared by 52% of parents and 76% of future parents. Also, 41% supported reconfiguring the way students are assigned to elementary schools so each of the schools would be for different grade levels rather than attending a single one through their elementary school years. That is the concept that's popularly known within the education community as grade centers. 51% of parents supported it and 33% of future parents supported it, while 36% of plurality of seniors were unsure about this issue as well. Also, majorities of parents at 58%, future parents at 52%, opposed using permanent trailers to hold classes at the elementary schools in order to accommodate more students. That was probably the most unpopular idea tested in the survey. Also, notably, 24% of respondents said that their primary source of information about school building plans was from reading school and district publications. Second in that hierarchy, if you will, was reading the newspaper at 17%, but it was actually first among non-parents. And the reason I think that's notable is because it indicates to me as you're working to inform the public about your plans, you're not going to be able to use a single medium to reach everyone. In the era of fragmentation, as this survey would indicate, you're going to need to use a multifaceted approach to reach everyone in the community. Also, looking at funding school facilities, 61% of voters supported constructing a new high school building on land already owned by the school district and repurposing this current building so it can be used for middle school grades, which would meet all school capacity needs for the foreseeable future. However, overall support for this idea dropped to 47% when the respondents were told it would be funded through a 38-year, $162 million bond issue that would cost property owners about $8 in additional taxes each month for each $100,000 of property value. Now, 47% isn't a bad place to start, because when you consider that there's sampling variability, which means it could be higher or lower, and the fact that there is a certain percentage of respondents who are undecided who will eventually break in support of the issue, that suggests to me that the idea is teetering on the brink of having a majority of support initially. I do want to note that although support drops to 47% overall, 67% of parents supported the idea. However, 55% of non-parents opposed it. So that was a somewhat divisive issue as well. Lastly, 74% supported making additions to some of the elementary schools so they would have more classrooms and most students can continue to go to neighborhood schools, which would meet all school capacity needs for about 10 years before other steps would need to be taken. Once again, however, overall support dropped from 74 to 62% when told it would be funded through a 38-year, $82 million bond issue that would cost property owners about $2 per month for each $100,000 of property value. 79% of parents supported it, as well as 86% of future parents and 54% of non-parents. So that's a much more viable idea, although neither is out of the realm of consideration, in my opinion. Having worked on a number of bond issues and various types of capital projects throughout the state, I can tell you that both of those are within the realm of potential passage. With that, I'd like to open the floor for any questions anyone has.
You're going to have a quiz on this next one.
How are these people chosen?
Random selection.
Just random selection?
Yeah. And they were all registered voters within the school district,
Okay.
which of course includes the township.
I'm impressed, frankly. I think that those numbers are reflecting some of the work we've done, almost drowned in the community and information. And I think we need to keep it up, because there's a lot of what you're talking about that we didn't get that kind of response.
I was impressed too, because despite the high sensitivity of property taxes, people are still willing to consider these ideas, despite the fact that they have cost implications. I can only reasonably conclude that's because you've developed a vast reservoir of confidence through the work that you've done with the quality of education and your spending and finance practices.
Well, I'm happy. I've been around a long time, so.
Those are astute observations, I agree. Other comments or questions?
Great. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. I normally have to give a lot of bad news to school systems, so it's a nice change of pace to be here tonight and provide a glowing outlook. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Fallon. Next, we will bring up some members of our community advisory team to talk about those two options and some details on them. But first, I want to express how great it was to work with the entire community advisory team. Again, it was a group of 60, 65 community members. We met 4 times. They gave up time in their evening to come and put effort into this endeavor because they care about the community, and I greatly appreciate that. We've got a group that's here tonight. Some of them are going to talk, some of them are just here for support, but I'd like to recognize them. So if you could stand when I call your name, that'd be awesome. Nell Canfield, Roger Coy, Scott Dorston, Liz Driver, Jonathan Faulkner, Brian Jarvis, Felipe Nazario Romero, and Jenny Zollers. Thank you all very much. It's been great to work with you, and we'll continue on, I'm sure, with other things. So first up, we are going to have Liz Driver present Plan A.
See, Mr. Schuman's here. He knows me and technology do not go hand in hand. Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Mr. Otten, other members of Beavercreek City Schools, as well as the community. I have the honor of presenting one of the plans this evening, Plan A, which is the new elementary and distributed additions. So you have it in front of you, and you will also see a graphic that will kind of break it down in more detail. As I am a visual learner, we have that support for you as well. So Plan A does include the expansion of the preschool into the current facility around the central office, and this will give 150 seats to this facility. Central office in Plan A will ultimately move to Main Elementary. The new elementary is part of this big purchase, and we would also have to have land for it to go on. So we currently, as you know, do have land available to us, but based upon growth projections, would that be the feasible option or not? Additions would be at Fairbrook Elementary, go Foxes, that's my home. Gives 150 additional seats. Valley would also have 150 additional seats. Ankeny Middle School, 200 additional seats. And Beavercreek High School, 400 additional seats. Those are just additions, so we have to take a look at the renovations as well. Ferguson Hall would ultimately gain 50 additional seats. Beavercreek High School, the auditorium, field house, and auxiliary gym would also see renovations. Additional gyms will be at Fairbrook, Parkwood, and Valley. And now that I'm in the elementary, I totally understand the concept of the cafetorium. And wow! So it'd be really nice to have additional facilities for these children because they really can use it. Oh, yeah, they did it again. So here we go. Here's a visual I was telling you all about. As you can see, shaded in gray is the top. P stands for preschool. K is kindergarten. And the additional numbers represent the grade levels. This is booked by who all would be within those facilities, the names, as well as the amount of students that would be enrolled. At the bottom, you will see in orange, 1,200 additional seats based upon Plan A would be added. 9,515 total seats versus the projection of 9,218. Ultimately, as I stated, Main becomes central office and also becomes an open opportunity for tenant offices as well, knowing that. So here are some numbers. You can see the new elementary would be 700 total seats. You see the addition added on to Fairbrook, addition added on to Valley. Ankeny has that addition as well. Ferguson, the freshman building, it shows renovations there, and it also shows additions to Beavercreek High School. I'll give you a moment to take a look at that. Let me know when you're ready. You guys good? Okay, thank you. So any situation you present always is going to have pros and cons. And the team really took a look at this, and we really had a very fruitful professional discussion and said, what are really good things about this and what is not so great about it? So I'm positive. Let's talk about the pros first. Levels most of the elementaries, and as you know, the elementaries, some of them are kind of busting out the seams more so than others, but it gives us a little bit of a level. The definite benefit to pre-K is that we're all in one facility, such as this. It's a lower initial cost, and I really like the word initial because it ultimately is a Band-Aid for future problems. It allows for more community use and engagement, so that definitely is a pro. But if we take a look at the cons, it kind of outweighs the pros. 9th grade is still separate. This is, as I said, a Band-Aid to the solution. New money into older buildings, so is that really feasible? You have to weigh that option. It overloads a maxed out high school campus. Some benefit more than others. A new elementary can only get a smaller portion of the community. So is it truly the best of all plans? We may need to purchase land to match the population growth. And as Mr. Thompson showed, the population growth may not be in the area necessarily where we currently have that property. So do we have to sell the current property and purchase new land? I'm not a math person, but I think that's probably the best option if this were to be chosen. Additions create coordination issues with building utilization during construction. Having been in Ferguson many years ago when it was getting renovated, and Mr. Taylor, I believe you were still there when you hadn't retired just yet, and they had taken out the rafters, and you could hear people walking. It was under construction, and as a teacher, it was very, very difficult to instruct my students with that construction going on. So it does impede what's best for kids, and we have to look at that when we look at both options presented to you tonight. Okay. Plan B will be presented by another member of the community team. Thank you for your time. Yeah. It's this one.
The forward arrow?
Yeah, the forward arrow. Thank you. Yeah, never used one before.
Good evening, members of the board, fellow educators. I'm Nell Canfield, a teacher at the high school. John Faulkner and I are going to co-present for you Plan B, which is the plan that of course includes a new high school. As you can see, there's a little bit of overlap with our previous plan as well. So this plan does include the same expansion of the preschool into our current central office and adding the 150 seats, central office moving to Maine. The new high school on whichever land, our existing land, or if other land were to be acquired at any point, but we're looking at roughly $3,000, 3,000 seats available for our high school students in the community. In addition to that, all of our elementary buildings would become K-6 buildings, which of course would be a change for the community. We can show you that a little bit better on the graphic that's about to come. Ankeny Middle School would become an elementary school under this plan. Again, you'll see that on the next slide. Coy Middle School will also become an elementary school. The current facility that is the high school would become a 7-8 building. So all district 7th and 8th graders would report to the current high school. And Ferguson Hall remains available to the district as well. And same additional gyms available at Fairbrook, Parkwood, and Valley. So this is Plan B. Some things that are similar. Again, the preschool plan remains the same, but you can see Ankeny, Coy, Fairbrook, Parkwood, Shaw, Trayvine, Valley, all K-6 buildings, and you can see the number of seats that would be available within those buildings. Also providing us more seats than is the projected capacity. Our old high school, again, what would be the old high school, excuse me, would become our 7-8 building, again, providing us better capacity to meet the needs of those students. And then you see our new high school, allowing us the 3,000 seats. You'll notice, and John will speak to this point in just a moment, but you'll notice that this plan also allows us to bring the 9th grade back into the high school, which is a very supported idea throughout all of our meetings as well. Any questions on those?
I was just asking Paul, so Coy and Trayvine
would still operate as separate buildings, or would they operate as one unified building?
You know, we didn't get to that point of discussion of whether they would be a combined building or not. Obviously, they're a shared facility, but there wasn't any discussion to that particular question. If that's the correct answer.
They could be combined or stay separate.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Again, my name is John Faulkner. I'm a parent of a student in the Beavercreek district and a business owner, so I met a couple of those demographics. So I'm covering the pros and cons on this Plan B. I'd like to kind of channel my high school civics teacher and maybe make it like compare and contrast, because it's pros and cons as it relates to the other presented plans, so and other plans in general. So on the con side, I'm a lawyer by trade, so I'm negative by trade. So on the con side, obviously the bond cost, it's the more expensive option. The statistics were already provided to you, so cost is always going to be a concern, and this is more expensive. It's just that simple. Furthermore, it continues some uneven elementary distribution, so just a little explanation on that. What that means is the elementary schools all still exist, but there's not a similar number of students in each of those buildings. That's what that means in different English. So the compare and contrast on the pro side, compared to the other plan, this creates a new high school, and the high school is designed for the next generation of learning and teaching. So it's a new building, new construction that can be developed. I think that speaks for itself. Compared to the other plan, this plan puts the 9th grade with the other high school grades. For those people on the committees that were much smarter than I, 9th grade was decided to be more similar to 10th, 11th, and 12th grade than the 6th grade, which is currently on its own, being probably more similar to 5th or 7th. So it seemed to make sense to put like. The no disruption due to construction, as Liz already pointed out, as buildings are built, construction is done while the students are there. That can be disruptive. This plan would have the new construction occurring and then occupancy taking place for the most number of students. One popular compare and contrast to the other plan is this plan continues to use all of the existing structures. So you don't have any phase outs of any buildings. You just have all of the buildings getting used or repurposed, but still being used. Allows for a more balanced distribution of elementary population. Again, this has to do with, excuse me, I said the other one wrong on the cons. This is evening out the population in the building. The con on the uneven elementary distribution has to do with where do people live in the district. So if you look at that blue, yellow, pink, green, brown, and nude colored map or whatever that is, where people live and where the buildings are located, that still continues a con in this one. So I apologize for the confusion there. So more balanced across the buildings. This plan allows for the most growth. So very simply stated, gets the largest number of seats added to the district. Improved traffic patterns. This has to do with the fact that since all the buildings are being used, the community, I would suspect, already knows where the school zones are and how to navigate around them. So it's basically building one single new building, and all the existing buildings still have traffic patterns and accustomed levels of where people drive at various times during the day. This plan includes an expansion of athletic and community use facilities. The other plan had that as well. This has to do with places that youth sports teams could use and other community groups. And this creates, again, the largest amount of that. Then when it says most effective use of tax dollars, again, we acknowledge that the con is this is an expensive option. However, it's going to the voter with an ask that has the most productive, I think, one-time ask, and then the largest benefits. So it's not a Band-Aid solution where pay some money now and then we're going to ask you a few years later. But if we're going to ask you, we're going to make it really worth your while to invest in the schools. So that's the pros and cons on Plan B. Mr. Dorston, are you up next?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think another pro might be that
as far as Beavercreek students having use of the new facility, at least all high school students who are all the students in Beavercreek will funnel through a new facility.
I think that's an excellent point. It's, and the high school basically is the capstone building of the whole entire district, and as everyone funnels upward, they would benefit from that building versus where they began at the different elementaries. I think that's a good point. I think we omitted that by my mistake, so thank you for pointing that out.
I think there's history with that. There's, when Coy and Trayvine were built, there was a lot of community discussion about the haves and the have-nots, and that, and the town got all the new stuff. So I think that is something to remind people of when there's concern.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Board. Thanks for the opportunity to come speak before you this evening. John said, I'm Scott Dorson. I'm with the fire department also, so I kind of wear two hats. Very aware of the fiscal responsibility that comes with it, being a 30-year steward of taxpayer dollars as well. That's one of the discussions the group had throughout this process, was being good fiscal stewards. The recommendation for the new high school, even though it's a more expensive option, is the maximum benefit to the community member. We're going to ask for money now. We're going to do it one time, where if we do the elementary, as mentioned before, it's a stopgap method. So we're going to come in, we're asking for money, then we're asking for twice as much later to solve the problem we should have solved right the first time. This is what this option does allow us to do. So being a fiscal steward, I'm fully aware of that, especially at this time for the fire department, what we have coming up in November. One of the benefits that I believe is maintaining use of all facilities and holding the historical perspective of the Beavercreek school system by repurposing the main elementary building to the central office. That's one thing this community does take, is the, as we go through things, is the historical perspective of Beavercreek. So that's one way we can utilize that, as well as let some other potential tenants utilize that space as well, which in turn could be a revenue stream as well. The distribution of students, and with most of the growth being in the green area of the map, directly affects fire department as well. By shifting some of that around, we're going to be able to allow some of these other schools to share that distribution of growth, as well as putting the high school in a position, the new high school in a position where, as was mentioned before by Mr. Taylor, everyone's going to have access to it. As you're coming up through the end part of your elementary education, high school education, so on and so forth, they're going to have the maximum benefit of the technologies and things such as that will prepare them for the workforce in the future. So I think that's very important as well. It gives us some flexibility also with the Ferguson Hall. While not directly purposed as classroom with this plan, it does allow us for future growth, and that's one thing throughout this whole thing. When I crunch some numbers on seats available, this plan allows for the most expansion beyond the 9,218 projected students that we could have. As was alluded to earlier, we're always on that high end of the projections. Well, the way things continue to grow, and we've seen this with the fire department as well, we maintain on that high end. So this gives us more flexibility with that through future redistricting or something like that, or balancing out of grades or shifting grades around to where we can reutilize that building, being another 600 and some odd seats for potential future growth. So it allows us that flexibility there as well. And it allows for the newer safety features and stuff in a new facility such as the high school, which I think we're all very well aware of. In closing, this plan is the plan. It's the pay now instead of pay once and pay twice as much later, I think, which is very important. And it has taken this group that was involved between your services you contracted out and the 60 members who sat on the committee. One of the things they were very cognizant of was looking at the future. So that's why we came to you this evening with this recommendation. This plan is a long-term plan. It's looking out to 2028 and actually beyond for the community of Beavercreek. So we all felt that was very important. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to again thank the committee for all of their hard work. That was a great presentation, and I think very telling of what the group worked through in those meetings. Next, we have a cost estimate, and Mr. Fallon spoke about this as well. So we can't build something without a cost associated with it. So we have an estimated preliminary bond cost based on a 38-year bond issue. Plan E, which is or Plan A, which is the new elementary, would be an additional $2 per month per $100,000 home valuation. And that would work out to $24 a year per $100,000 valuation. Plan B, which is the new high school, would be $8 per month or $96 a year per $100,000 valuation. So to kind of put it in perspective for people, I think it's important that they see these numbers and can tie it and make it relevant to what their life is about or what's going on in their world. And if Plan A or B are selected for our master facility plan, we would have to go to voters at some point for the funding. Other options. Well, we could always do nothing. I don't think that's a great plan, and I wouldn't have put all the work into everything that we've done if that was really something that we would back. But there may be people that say, why do we really need to do anything? Can't we just wait it out? Lack of planning only going to make it worse later. It's going to create consistent challenges for us. And if you look at those projections over the next, it's created issues for us already. We've had to move 3 classrooms from Trayvine to Cooley. Those things are going to keep occurring, and that's very disruptive to the educational process. So we don't want to do that. It negatively impacts the quality of our education and value to the community. We need to be a value to the community, so we need to plan and look into the future. A second piece is redistricting. We did that once, and it's very short term, but it does not change our capacity issues. We still have that same problem even if we redistrict. So, any other options? Trailers. And Mr. Fallon pulled this in his survey as well, and not anything that the community was interested in, but again, something that needs to be looked at. We need to look at all options and make decisions with eyes wide open. Some of the concerns or realities that you get with trailers are listed there. Security, they are not part of the building. Intruders, lockdown, the construction materials that they are made out of are not the same as a building. So it's not going to be safe. Safety, weather issues, it's a trailer. We would have to get them inspected and installed correctly, but it's not a building. So if there were bad storms that came through, wind, rain, all of those things will affect them more dramatically than they will a building, a brick and mortar. Impact to the education process or inconveniences. They're located outside, disconnected from the rest of the building, so there's travel time for students. There's creating walkways or decking with canopies that in inclement weather, students have to traverse through that to get to their classroom. Maintenance and efficiency. There's more energy used. They're not insulated as well. The materials just aren't as good. So we're going to have individual units heating and cooling those, and those are going to be more money to run and upkeep over the long run. Image and perception. Do we want trailers attached to our building with fences and all of those other pieces that go with it? As Mr. Fallon surveyed, it's not something the community is going to support. So, another piece with trailers, how much are they going to cost us? Well, we have to look at purchase versus lease. Depending on how long you anticipate to have the trailer classrooms will help with that decision. If you purchase, so I did some budgetary estimates to look, and I talked with multiple companies. But if you're going to purchase an 8 classroom unit with restrooms, you're looking at approximately $915,000. You're going to lease it for 36 months, $722,000 for the same unit, or lease it for 60 months, approximately $894,000 for that same unit. So 5 years, if you're going to have it for 60 months or 5 years, that's where you need to really think about if you were going to purchase versus lease. And those costs include trailer freight, site work, and installation. Any questions with that? Yes.
I have one, right? Back on your beginning slide where you showed the costs, the differences in the cost, is there some way that you could estimate?
That one there?
No, try again, maybe.
Cost of,
Keep going. The pros and cons, I think. All right, well, I'll just tell you what. That there's something in here someplace that says this is what it's going to cost if we go with A, and that says this is what it's going to cost if we go with B. But for comparison purposes for the community, I think we need to add another factor in there that says what it's going to cost when we get around to having to fix what we didn't if we use the Plan A. If we don't need the high school, but we're going to have to come back and do something regardless, okay?
So
that's a short term.
Right, so the short term, and then we're going to have to come back at some point and do it again.
Exactly. And I think if we have a number in there.
Maybe how soon are we going to come back?
Well, yeah, it's sooner.
I mean, but, you know,
we'll be back and it's going to cost right because the cost of everything keeps going up. Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you, I taught when there were trailers in Beavercreek, and it was a nightmare. I mean, it really was. I mean, and then we weren't even looking at, unfortunately, the safety factor. I mean, we were looking at safety for the kids, but today it's a real factor. And I mean, to me, it's like renting a house. It's money down the drain. Renting an apartment, it's money down the drain.
Yes.
But I mean, that's for the community to decide. I'm just, I mean, I know it was like teachers teaching in trailers. Fortunately, I was not one of them, those trailers, but it was a nightmare. And a lot of, they didn't even have bathrooms at that time, and so the whole class had to come out as a unit. And we had the kindergartners and first graders in those trailers. That was a nightmare. And so the whole unit has to go out together, and in the winter it was icy. It was just, it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and if one kid has to run to the restroom, well, you're not going to send a kindergartner or first grader out by themselves, so everybody's going. I mean, it's just, it totally disrupts the teaching. I mean,
Very far from ideal.
it's not ideal at all in any way, shape, or form.
And I'm sure Jenny could speak to how hard we work to get rid of those gang things.
Right.
And swore we'd never let them back in here, if I remember correctly. So you and I are still here, that's all we need is one more vote. They're just not worth it. They're not worth what they do. Fire drills, weather drills, when there's bad weather, and we've got all these little kids trying to run, you know.
Yep.
And they don't have anywhere in there to go.
Yep, not a good situation.
So-
I would totally agree. Any additional questions for me before I turn it over to Mr. Otten for next steps?
So you have a number for 8 trailers. Is that what you see? Would it answer the capacity question?
It depends on where we would put those.
Right.
So that plays into earlier where the growth is occurring, and Trayvine we know, and now Main Street is suffering with the 440 homes from Daniel's growth.
Well, 8 trailers, if you put 30 kids in a trailer, that's a lot of kids.
Yes.
But that's times 3, 240 kids spread out over whatever, you know.
Right.
I'm thinking when we had trailers, we probably had more than 8 if you consider the district. 2 or 3 at the high school, 4 at the high school, 2 at Maine,
3 at Valley,
2
4
at
at
Shaw.
Valley.
So, and that was with a much smaller population as well.
Yeah, so the 8 would not solve.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
No, not at all.
So now I get to close it out. First thing I want to do is I want to thank our committee for the amount of time that they spent working on this. Some of us were able to attend those meetings and to see the conversation, the ideas, the plans that were generated were just truly amazing. And SHP, I want to kudos to them. They were really the backbone leading that process. So a lot of information has been given to you tonight. We will give you this PowerPoint as well, so you have this PowerPoint. But what is our next step? So what do we do after tonight? So after tonight, we will be communicating this presentation out to our families and out to our community. We want our community to see this. We want our families to understand it. There will be information that is coming out to our families to encourage them to come look at this. It is a critical item. What we're also going to be asking though is we're going to be asking our board, our 5 board members, to gather and solicit feedback regarding these options. So we really presented 3 options tonight. The option of doing nothing is one. I think we know where we stand on that. The option of elementary school with additions, we know there's pros and cons, and you can see those lists change pretty dramatically. And then obviously option B is the new high school, and you can see where that fell. So what we want to do is when we have something that's this big, something that we've worked on for an entire year, we want to make sure that we choose the right option for our community. So what we want to do is we want to give our board the opportunity really to take the time from this board meeting into September to really take not only the information that we give you, but to allow you to talk to people at work, to talk to people that you run into at the grocery store, because we know that people seek you out. They want to talk to you about stuff that we do, and we want to give you the time to look at that. We also want to give you time as you walk out of here today to say, hey, Greg, one thing I was curious about is Mr. Taylor said, would this trailer situation work if we only had 8? So to give you an opportunity to ask those additional questions. What we would look to do is return here in September for our September board meeting. That meeting is on September 12th. So that is a week earlier. We did that on purpose when we planned it back in January. Not for this, but we just had that date chosen. And we will have this as an item for board discussion for the board. So at the beginning of our agenda, the board will have an opportunity really to kind of share out what you've taken away from this presentation, what you've heard over the last month, maybe what questions you may have asked Greg during that time. Kind of gather that feedback, talk about your strengths and weaknesses, and then we would really look for the board individually to talk about where you felt you were landing on what option is the most appropriate option. Then, under items for board action, which would be later in the agenda, we would now approve a master facility plan. That's all we're doing. We're just approving a plan, something that says when the time comes and we have to be prepared to do this, we need to have a plan that our community has worked on, that we have gotten feedback, that we've polled our community. This is the plan. And so this is the final step to come up with that plan that SHP will come together for us. Obviously, when you come up with a plan, we don't want to take the plan and stick it on a shelf and leave it there. We recognize that these are true issues that we're facing. When I sat down with Mr. Thompson the other day and we were looking at numbers, Greg said, and he said it again tonight, so we're like in perfect timing of why we're doing this. In fact, we may be a little late behind it to try to catch this growth. We know the growth that we're seeing in Trayvine, those kind of pieces that we're trying to fix and address. Any bond issue that gets passed, you're going to be sitting on it for 3 years building until you can move in. So there will be a lot of growth. We're almost looking, when you look at the numbers, almost 100 kids each year is walking through the doors. So we would have an item for board action to ask the board not only to share that, but item for board discussion, not only share, but then to come back later in the agenda for you to vote on that option. Once that's done, we will then be prepared to move forward with how are we going to address our growth. One of the things I want to share to the board, we have bonds that are rolling off the ballot in 2020. Those bonds roll off. Those numbers that you see when you look at $8 and $2, those are very, very small numbers. Those are not typical numbers for these type of growth, these types of developments, bonds that we would be moving forward. But the reason that they're so low is because if we would be successful to pass a bond issue in November of 2020, our community, that's what they would feel. So they're still paying that because it would start in January, but it's because we have bonds that would be rolling off that following year. So we are not only hitting this plan at the right time, but we would be going to the voters at the best possible time. If we were not successful in November, unless we ran the following November, that $2 and $8 changes, but what the community would feel, they would actually gain those bonds back starting in January with a failure. If they approved it later, it would still equate to the same amount of money. Not the 2 or the 8, those would look different. But that's why those numbers look as good as they do at this point. So with that, does the board have any questions between now and September? And as we get information in, we will share that with the board as well. If we get comments from the community, we will share that so that you're very well aware of what's happening as well.
You're going to send us copies of all this?
Yes. I can send it digitally to you, or we can give you a hard copy, however you would like to get it. Well, I know, but if they want to write stuff, I can give you both.
I would like a hard
Let's
copy.
do both.
I'll do both. I'll do both.
I want something like that.
We'll give you both.
So-
Actually, we will give you both before you, well, we'll give you the hard copy before you leave tonight.
So is November 2020 the first chance we could
Yeah.
go to the voters, or
Yeah, you
could
could
we go in May?
You could go
or-
earlier, yeah.
Well, May is March.
Yeah, it's, the May got moved to March, so,
But we need to do it now.
yes. We have to do a renewal as well, so. Any other questions? Finally, I think I would like to really thank Mr. Thompson, because we are at the finish line at this point of this process. And I will tell you that Greg, this has kept him up at night. And it's really been a year-long process for what he's done. So I want to commend Greg. He has led the process. He has been on the phone calls with SHP. He's worked with all the committees. He's had great people to work with, but Greg has really led. So I want to commend Greg for his hard work in getting us to the finish line.
You can seal the work that's, I mean, I'm sure we don't even know half the work that's gone into it, but thank you. And the community, thank all of you, because the time you all gave to make this happen right now. Thank you, Greg.
All right, with that, we will be back in September to determine what option we're going to go with and to finalize the plan. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. That concludes presentations.
Okay. So there are no questions or comments from the public, so I'm going to need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the July 18, 2019 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Any discussion? All vote, please.
Ms. Hunt?
Yes.
Ms. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Abstain?
Mr. Gunn?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
My turn. Financial reports, I'm going to need a motion and a second to approve the following July 2019 financial reports, fiscal year 20 amended certificate of estimated resources, and the July 2019 donated items.
So moved.
Second. Discussion.
Well, we're off to a good start with the beginning of the first month of fiscal year 2020. We are in alignment with what our projections were, and the one thing I do just want to bring up that it's a financial issue, but we, at opening day, we have a benefits fair. There's not much talk about the benefits fair because everything's about the opening day. But my payroll staff is also benefits staff. So Darren's over benefits, but the payroll ladies, Cheryl Warman and Tanya Adams. Cheryl Warman is a 30-year employee. She's on her 31st year. And she is the brain behind the benefits fair. And I just want to give a kudos to her for all the hard work that she does. There's some months of planning that go into that. And there's a lot, I think, that people would miss if we did not have the benefits fair on that opening day. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her and to our staff for the work that they do at the benefits fair. And I don't have anything else. Okay. Roll call?
Yep.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Hunt?
Yes.
Ms. Sark?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Ms. Regano?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I'm going to need a motion a second following the employment salary changes, leave of absence, terminations, job descriptions, and employment type 4 reimbursement. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, yes?
I do not have it.
Ms. Arnold? Yes. Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Ms. Hunt?
Yes.
Ms. Regano?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
George, the superintendent's report.
Yes, I have one item to share with the board this evening. If this is a first reading, which this is not a pressing issue, but will be for this upcoming school year. But we can move on this in September. You'll notice that we're looking at board policy 5460 graduation requirements. There is one item, and it is underlined on page 44. The state of Ohio has approved for the physical education waiver that show choir will now count as a physical education. I figured this board would be just fine, but you guys might want to approve it tonight. You can do that. You moved it, but we'll bring it back in September. The kids who are in show choir, this will be in effect for them for this year, even with approval in September. So, yeah, we're very excited to be able to do that. Yeah, I'm not voting jazz hands. So that would conclude superintendent's report. So we'll be back next month with that approval.
Okay. On to announcements, so school just started, but all school will be closed on September 2nd. And the next Board of Education meeting is, and a joint work session with the city of Beavercreek will be here September 12th. And that's it for announcements. And on to board comments. We're going to start with Mr. Taylor.
Okay. I feel so excited about the start of the new year. It seems like the attitude in general of everyone I've talked to in the system is very, very positive. And I think that having a great start like that is a tremendous place to be in. Opening day ceremonies for staff. Great as per usual. Having used the field house was also good. In your video, I was surprised that my granddaughter happened to be in there. She was the crazy tumbling person who was all excited about shopping for new clothes. No big surprise there. And yeah, it's just a great start to the year. And concerning the Career Center, we are in the process, of course, of a very large building project, about $80 million for a new career center on the outskirts of Xenia. And of course, as all big building projects like that go, commercial building projects, it's a roller coaster. So it's in the ground. Utilities are kind of on the way. And it's one of those also not just a building project, it's a political process as well, dealing with governmental entities to make things happen. But that's about it. And also a great start to the year there.
This is Arnold.
My brain is full.
Same here.
This has inserted a whole bunch of thoughts that are going.
Lot to digest.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so cool, the way that, you know, you get summer and, you know, think they're not doing too many things and then bang, here they come. And everybody, everywhere in the district is impacted by that. But I had so much fun looking at all the Facebook pictures of the kids running around with little things from home that say, this is my fill in the blank. First year, you know, or in, you know, 5th grade or something, and they're just so cute. I love kids. It's a good thing, too, to have 11 grandchildren.
Yes, oh, yeah.
And thanks to all of you for what you do. I mean, and have done with the committee and the district and those of you that are teachers, you know, thank you. That's all I got.
I'll echo the thanks to those of you on the committee and those that aren't here. Happy to see lots of faces I recognize of people I know who are highly invested in our district to speak into that process. So thank you for your time with that. I am the new parent of a high schooler and middle schooler, so we might need a moment of silence at the end of the week. So we've almost survived. We've almost gotten there. So lots of newness in our house this week. Mostly good, but just, you know, stressful. Lots of change, lots of new stuff. So so far so good, I think. I haven't gotten any calls. So. I'm excited about the ideas that were presented. I know the new high school is definitely my personal preference as a parent. And seeing my kids are both involved with athletics, we spend a lot of time in all kinds of fields and courts and field houses and things like that. And our facilities just are not what I would expect from a district our size and for the success of our athletic program. So I would love to see that support our kids that are doing those things, as well as, you know, Fairmont has the new music or auditorium for the theater and things like that. And I imagine the new high school building would allow us to have something like that for our show choir and all of our music programs. So exciting stuff. I hope we get it built big enough for my kids to be there. Probably not my daughter, but maybe my son. So, yeah, that's about it.
Mr. Morrison.
Okay, tough act to follow, but obviously ditto to our facilities committee, Mr. Thompson. Bringing together the folks that you brought together is not an easy task, and it's great to have so many community members represented, but then to bring a researcher, to bring the architect, to bring, you know, all those folks together for all these meetings, that's not a simple task, so thank you. Obviously, you've done your homework, you've done a great job, so thank you. And then, this is exciting. You know, when you start a school, you know, not only is it exciting what the facilities committee is looking at doing, but even without that, it's always exciting when you walk into a building to see the floors shine, and everything is new, everything looks nice. It's just a great feeling, and you know, we need to thank those people, you know, our custodians and our maintenance people who've been working all summer long in the heat, getting everything ready to go. Getting our mechanics, getting our buses ready so all of our buses pass inspection, food service people planning menus, getting ready to go. It's just, you know, everybody thinks that schools don't operate in the summer. A lot of work is done over the summer, so thank you to everyone.
Well, I spoke to a grandparent today, and she has two kids. Her two grandchildren are named, and she was just so excited with the way the year began. Kids came home yesterday, they were up, this was happening. She said, you know, everybody's just so welcoming there, and she's so thrilled that her grandchildren are part of the school district. And I stood up that one on at all the elementaries yesterday. I said, believe me, whether elementary, high school, I said, our staff loves our kids. We're here. Everybody in this district, the Worthing district, is here because of our kids. And I said, that took place in every building, in every classroom yesterday. I said, so that was nice for her to share that with me. Opening day was great. You know, the band always starts everything off, and it's like, and it really blew them out. I mean, because the acoustics in the gym for a band were, I think it was really loud, which I really loved. That was kind of cool. 302 marching kids, that's amazing. It really is. And, you know, I agree with Mrs. that a high school, new high school is the plan to go. I mean, when I drive around, I look at Centerville and I look at Kettering, I'm thinking, hey, we are Beavercreek. I mean, our kids deserve these things too. They really do. Our teachers deserve this. I mean, not just our kids. I mean, our parents deserve, and our community deserves this. It really does. I mean, it involves everybody. And, you know, thank you so much, Mr. Thompson, because I know the work that you put into this. And I mean, it's just amazing. And I think we're really headed in the right direction here. I mean, because our community came out, they were willing to come out. And I think the key here was the the transparency of the district. Letting our community know, hey, look, this is the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think that's such a key factor there because transparency builds trust. It really does, and it builds loyalty. And I think that is what we all stand for. And I think that's what the community is saying right now. I mean, the Hope Church said tonight they gave us $40,000 because they trusted us. That trust is a key factor. So to everybody, to all the teachers here tonight, thank you. I know the work you put into place. I know that it's not a 9-month job because I know the work you spent this summer getting your classroom ready. I know what you've done, and I know the money you spent out of your own pockets on this. Seriously, thank you so much. We really appreciate what you do. And I know those bus drivers starting out the first day. I thought of my son when he was this little kid, and these bus drivers getting all these parents calm down. He says, some kids are getting on the bus. We have an amazing group of people that work in Beavercreek schools, from our superintendent to our treasurer, to everybody involved in the central office. Thank you all for what you do, seriously. God bless you all and have a fabulous year. And with that, we're going into executive session, so I need a motion and a second to take us into it for Board Action Policy 121-22G3, pending or imminent litigation. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.